Hello, welcome to the ENFJ and ESTP show.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about the ESTP. I've seen a lot of videos on the ESTP and sometimes they can be a little bit stereotyped or based on a perception of the ESTP that might be a little bit less developed. And so we just wanted to present maybe a little bit of a more mature and or different perspective about the ESTP that you may not be expecting because you just hear or read something and think, oh, this, shallow player dude that just wants to live, go on adventures, and doesn't care about anybody else. That's the stereotype.
Living on the edge.
I would say, yeah, they just care about adrenaline, living on the edge. They don't really care about other people and their feelings, and some of that, there's some truth to it, and then there's also taking it too far and then kind of extrapolating inaccuracies from it. So anyway, this is my boyfriend, Juan, and he is a ESTP. And so we thought that we would be able to shed some light on, the accuracy of some of those stereotypes or inaccuracy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess the first thing we'll do is just start out with a question, and that is just a general, how would you as an ESTP describe extroverted sensing, which is the dominant function of the ESTP, assuming that you are invested in MBTI and know something about MBTI. The dominant function, the cognitive function, which is basically the wiring of the ESTP's mind, is extroverted sensing, which is all about concrete sensation in the now, real-time kinetic responses to the environment. But I want you to describe it from your words.
Okay. With my limited knowledge of MBTI that I've tried to learn and understand as much as I can, if I were to explain it and just I guess for me, extroverted sensing, so the SE, right, would be, it makes sense for ESTP mainly because, since I was a kid, I've always been involved in physical activity, right? So sports, soccer, baseball, basketball, football, MMA, wrestling. And the reason it's always been so easy for me to dive into any sport and feel like I can be successful at it is because it just always made sense, right? So whether it was baseball, grabbing the bat and understanding, okay, I just have to hit the ball, then the bat would be an extension of me. I pivot and I turn and the bat would swing with me. When I weightlift and I explain to people how they should kind of envision the attachments of the machines, it's always imagine your arms just being an extension of you holding onto the machine, but not really using, strength from something specific, but more as the mindset behind it. So it's just using your body to kind of feel out what you're trying to do, but not actually using it as a crutch, but more as the compass. You're feeling out. When I did jiu-jitsu and I did wrestling, we would do sessions where our eyes were blindfolded, or we were in the dark trying to wrestle or do jiu-jitsu, and it would be easy for me. I can close my eyes, and as soon as somebody grabbed my gi or pant leg or grabbed underneath my elbow, I knew immediately where the rest of their body was and what I had to do. It just made sense for me. And that's just in an athletic way of thinking of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it makes sense to me based on the sports and the different activities I did as a child till now growing up. But even if I take it to another level where it's me driving, right? Like I feel like while I'm driving, I know exactly how much pressure I have to put down in the car to brake it in time to not hit another car. I have never, ever gotten into a car accident.
Don't say that.
Up till this point, I have never, ever gotten into a car accident. I'm not trying to jinx anything, but up until this point, I've never hit somebody else. And I've been close to it a million times. I've slammed my brakes a million times. But this thing, my version of slamming my brakes is me having to put extra pressure quicker onto the brakes as opposed to somebody else who might slam both their feet on the brakes to avoid hitting another car. Because, and the few times I've had to slam my brakes, it was never me slamming my brakes and just avoiding hitting somebody head on. It was me slamming my brakes, pulling my emergency brake, drifting to the left or to the right, and knowing that I'm going to the left and there's nobody else there already. Because I already have a sense of like, okay, well, there's nobody there. I know there's nobody there.
Yeah.
I already understand, like, there's nobody in my blind spot. I already checked that. I'm already aware of that, so.
And you said to me before that when you're driving in a car, like, you are paying attention to, you know, where is the person's wheel?
Yeah.
Like, how are, you know,
I pay attention to the tires.
Like, where is how is it pivoted, like, the car to maybe to the left or to the right of you? Like, where is their wheel? Yeah. Like, does it look like it's about to, like, you know, turn into this lane? Like, you're constantly aware of all of those different nuances in the physical environment.
Even the driver. If I catch the driver to my right, like on like a 45-degree angle, and I catch him like spot checking his blind spot, then I'm like, okay, he's trying to make a left. He's trying to merge in. I'll slow down. Even if his turn signal isn't on, because unfortunately people don't use their turn signals. But if I can kind of see that, like, he keeps paying attention to his left, you know, review or left mirror, or looking at his rearview mirror, or trying to keep checking his blind spots, and I know he's trying to change lanes, and I'll pull back a little bit. Like, I pay attention to the driver and how they're acting, to the tires and where they're facing, where their hands are on the wheel. Like, I pay attention to all that stuff. And most people probably won't do that. That's probably a little bit extreme. I won't lie. That's a little bit extreme.
That might be like a you thing.
It's more of a me thing than an ESTP thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I want to avoid an accident, and I trust myself driving, that I know that I drive really great, but I know a lot of other people don't. So I'm very aware of everybody else on the road while I'm driving.
Yeah.
So, For me, I guess, in a nutshell, anything where I have to kind of rely on real life, like physical, I don't know, like not just understanding, but I have to rely on that, whether it's when I was working in construction, or when I was doing boxing, or doing jiu-jitsu, or if I was playing soccer, or even when I'm typing on a keyboard. You know, for me, that's just easy, because it's not just that I can do it in the physical real world, but I can envision myself doing it in my mind, and that makes it even easier for me.
Which by the way, I've tried to beat him, like, in, like, typing speed, and I think it's impossible. I've tried. I can't do it. I don't know how you do it. It's
fun for me. It really is, because I like playing video games on the computer, and I like watching YouTube videos and doing stuff like that, but typing and, like, watching words come down in real time, and, like, I'm trying to keep up with it and type it correctly is fun for me.
Yeah, I like to think that I'm really good at that, but I feel like you're, like, another level of being good at it.
Yeah, because I think I feel like I've gotten good, because over the years since I was in middle school, I think it was in 7th grade, I took my first, like, you know, typing test in a class, with, like, a keyboarding class, or, like, a computer class, and we all took, like, a typing test, and I realized I was good at it. But I realized it was actually super fun. Like, I actually enjoyed taking the typing test.
Yeah.
And then the next level was when I was a few years back, where I was taking a typing test. And I was taking a typing test against other people around the world that were taking it at the same exact time, in, like, a competitive sense. So then it got even more fun for me. So then I was like, let's do this. And I was super into it. And not just because I felt like I was typing fast, but because I was typing against other people. And it just added another element of fun for me.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
I wish I was that fast.
I used to, like, sit in my head and be like, okay, well, let me try to remember where all the keys are in my head, and pretend like, well, if I wanted to type this, then where would I be typing? And I would, like, pretend to type it out on, like, an empty desk. I don't know why, it was just fun. So yeah.
So that's awesome. I'm really glad that you went into that. Like, I don't think I was even anticipating that we would go into that level of detail, but I feel like I feel like I'm enlightened a little bit. So
Nice. ESTP.
Yes. So thank you for that. The next question I want to ask regarding ESTPs is describing what it's like for an ESTP to get more into their head, into the introverted thinking and like the analysis side, because I think with ESTPs we really focus on the extroverted sensing piece and like the introverted thinking, although it's like their introverted thinking is the secondary or auxiliary function in an ESTP's mental wiring. So basically it supports their extroverted sensing and basically saying like what makes sense in the outside world. And so it's a huge part of like how they think and how they go about, you know, their everyday life, but it's not as discussed and it's not as you know, looked at on a granular level as the extroverted sensing, because the extroverted sensing is so key to, you know, the ESTP's being, and so is the introverted thinking, but it's just not as obvious to the outside, to the onlooker. So I think, you know, getting some perspective on what that might look like for you would be awesome.
Well, I guess one way I can describe it where everybody else can kind of see it in real life would be if you've ever watched the Da Vinci Code. And in the Da Vinci Code, at the very end, when he's thinking about like the different codes, and he's like they're trying, what was that thing called? The scroll?
Cryptex.
Yeah,
Cryptex.
The cryptex. So he's there with the cryptex. He's there with the cryptex.
The only reason I know that is from Parks and Recreation.
Oh, yeah. So he's there with the cryptex, and he's there like just imagining like all these different codes and what makes more sense and what it could be, and he's like envisioning it turning. Like that's, to me, that's how I see it in my head. Like even as something as simple as opening the dishwasher and thinking, okay, I'm looking at all these dishes that are in the sink, my dishwasher's empty. How am I going to put all these in here so it's organized? They're all going to get extremely clean. Nothing's going to be stacked on top of each other so that the thing that's underneath won't get as clean. But how can everything be stacked perfectly right, organized, everything gets evenly cleaned out, and it's going to look nice and neat? You know, so I think of it even as something as small as washing dishes. Mm-hmm. Or I think of it to the extent of whether it was, I guess, utilizing also, you know, SE. When I'm boxing, I start thinking, okay, if this person places their foot in a specific way or lowers their shoulder in a specific place, I can imagine what the next step is going to be. And I can imagine it a few steps in front, because it's also the experience that comes with it that I can envision what I've already seen. If I see somebody step a certain way with their shoulder down a certain way, then I've experienced that opposite sides of seeing that so often that I kind of can already anticipate what's going to happen. Yeah. So it's not just me making something up because I think that's what's going to happen. It's a portion of that, but it's also being in that so often and seeing it like firsthand so often that I know there's only a certain amount of routes it can actually go. So like I can already anticipate, okay, well, it's like Doctor Strange. Like at the Avengers, where he's just there like all weirding out and like being all weird, and everybody's like, okay, well, he just saw like hundreds of millions of different ways it could have been, and he knows the right true answer now. I can kind of be that way when it comes to certain things physically too, like in sports, like in boxing, like in even in a work environment where I got to be more in my head. I can think about, okay, well, how can I accomplish this? And I would imagine myself doing it different ways and what makes more sense for me to do it. Where it's going to be effective, it's not going to take up as much of my time, and I will enjoy it a little bit more. Or it could be a little bit more fun for me, as opposed to being very robotic and be like, okay, well, let me just go through the motions and deal with it. And then where I could have probably done it in a more productive way. So I take time to sit there and kind of just go like, you know, sit back into my little office in my brain and figure out, okay, what's the best way for me to handle this. And yeah, I just try to have some little bit of some time in my brain to figure that out. But it's not just thinking, but it's just envisioning.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, to me, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
but to me, that's like the reason that ESTPs and I think SETI or TISE is like so notoriously good at strategy. Like, that's like them being able to see like what is in front of them and then being able to say, like, here are the best ways to make sense of this external landscape. Like, here's how to navigate it in a way that makes the most sense. And I think that's why SETI or TISE, like an ESTP or an ISTP specifically, might be good at strategy.
I mean, that's why I love strategy games.
Yeah.
Like, I love strategy games, like League of Legends. Even when I used to play Throwback, like Halo 3, back on like the Xbox, like I would spend by myself. You can create custom modes where nobody else is on the map except for you. And I would create a custom mode with that map and go and test out different angles. I would throw grenades at specific points of the wall to see where it would bounce off of. So when I was in a real game, I can mimic that in a real setting and actually, like,
that's interesting.
Do good. So I would purposely do that. Put myself in like a fake map, but it's still the same one you would use. It's just nobody else is in there. When it's a custom game with you by yourself, and I would do that all the time. I mean, that might just be the addictive. I'm very addicted to the game, and I was like, I want to be super successful.
But
to me,
but that's cool.
Yeah, to me, it was just like, it's strategy. Like, if I understand every angle of me throwing this grenade at the wall, or finding these little, like, not cheats, but little, like, places I can hide where nobody would see me. Because I would hide in a certain corner and then go back to the game and review it like in a third-person camera view, where you're the camera moving around the map, and my character's stuck in like the corner that he was at, and I would kind of be like, okay, well, if somebody's running past this wall, would they really pay attention to be able to see me, or am I camouflaging with the lighting and the wall color of that room specifically? And I would do that all the time in Halo 3. Like, that's what I would do. And with the games that I play now, like League of Legends, like I would do the same thing. I'll go into a custom game and try out my champs and figure out exactly what works best and what doesn't. And that's what I like to do. That's what I like to do.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to skip over a little bit because I know this video has kind of gone a little bit longer, which is awesome because I think it's a lot of it, what we've talked about has been really good and valuable. Slightly unexpected, but in a good way. But I find that there's a sentiment about ESTPs that they're kind of like nonchalant and, with, I don't know if it's just like a generalization, like it's like just that ESTPs just don't like care, I guess, about, I mean, it's like they care about they don't care about rules, they don't care about, but it kind of from the stereotypes, it extends to like make it seem like ESTPs just don't care about anything, like people, their feelings, like, I mean, it does, I feel like it does go that far.
Cold-hearted.
No, but really, because, like, I feel like,
cold-blooded.
I mean, you know this, because I've told you, but before I realized that, we would date, I thought, I was like, what types wouldn't I date? And I was like, ESTP. And then that was like the exact opposite of what happened, which was just kind of like, to me, the universe being like, huh.
In your face.
What do you know? Which is kind of like funny to me and satisfying, but in a weird way. But yeah, I mean, like, I always had this perception to be real. Like, I had this perception of ESTPs that was like, they're like players. They don't care about, how people feel. They just like are kind of into the like sensory pleasures and like whatever. And like that was always like the big stereotype. And I know it's like that when it comes to morality, when it comes to personal morals and values, that's like a very individual thing.
Yeah.
Overall. I think for any type, regardless of whether or not they're an ESTP.
Yeah.
But, you know, ESTPs, they have tertiary, they have extroverted feeling, which is basically the cognitive function in the third position for ESTPs that basically looks at, you know, what's socially appropriate, what is going to create a harmonious social environment, and, you know, a give and take. And ESTPs have this as their third function. So it's not their inferior. It's not their super weak spot. They're not great with it, but they do have a sense of it. So I do feel like ESTPs, like ENTPs, they have some sense of, you know, what's expected of them and you know, how they were raised in like a social setting, like certain expectations of what's appropriate and what's not. And so I guess I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are on that whole concept of the ESTP not caring and where that might come from, and how do you agree or disagree with that?
So with this, I mean, like you said, it's also
it's personal.
It's very personal.
Yeah.
It depends on the individual for the most part. But I can see how it can come across extremely cold and like, okay, we're detached from people and don't care how we make them feel or whatever. Like, I think it's a difference where me, when I was younger, I didn't care. Like, I did what I wanted, how I wanted, and however somebody else reacted to it, I was like, it's not my problem. Like, if you take it that way, that's on you, that's not on me. Like, I know where I'm coming from. I know where my motivations are. I know what my priorities are. I know what I'm trying to do. So that's what matters to me. Whether or not you understand that is unimportant to me. You know, whether you know where I'm coming from or what's my motive behind the reason why I'm doing something or saying something specific meant nothing to me. It was just what I knew about myself. And as long as I knew that and I believed that, I was happy. I was fine. And then as I got older and more mature, you know, not in my teens anymore or even my early 20s, I started realizing that there became a difference where it's not that I don't care, it's that I value what I believe and what I think, and I know how it might come across to some people, so I'm still going to be very careful about how I say it. That's the extroverted feeling right there. Yeah, so I'll be very careful about how I say something, but at the same time, there's still a sense of me that's like, well, if you feel some type of way based on what I'm saying, if I'm being honest and you don't like it, then there's not much I can do about it. It's out of my control. Right. So because it's out of my control, I'm going to care less. Yeah. I'm not going to care completely, like, 0%. If I'm triggering you or hurting you, not my problem, too bad. Because then that comes off extremely insensitive and, right. Like I don't give a crap about anybody and then cold and detached. But so for me now, it's just more of like, okay, I have to be aware of what my truths are, but also how it might come off to somebody else based on their experiences or what their triggers are, and decide in that moment, okay, how can I express this where it's not going to trigger them or make them feel like I don't care about their thoughts or their feelings, but still express my truths and what I feel and what I think, but move the scale less from I don't care and more into, well, I just need to be honest. Right. Right, so it has to shift from it's me not caring about them, but just me needing to be honest and still aware of how it's going to come off to them. But, I mean, I can see how that would be can come off cold to somebody, especially if somebody's just, like, extremely triggered or if they feel a type of way about some subject, like whether it's political, religious, or whatever, like, people that's triggering for some people. So if I just said whatever I wanted to say that, like, went through my mind and didn't take, didn't pay attention to how it can come off, then, yeah, it would come off really bad. People would not be able to understand it. They would be like, wow, Juan just says whatever he wants to say. He doesn't care about how people take it. He doesn't care about other people's feelings. And I think that's an immature way of an ESTP, I guess, is being in that place, saying whatever you want, not caring about other people's feelings. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's what I would say about it. I feel like
But what about actions-wise? Because you're talking about saying things.
Action-wise, I feel like it would be the same thing. It'd be pretty much the same thing because I mean, again, that's on the individual, like whether or not depending on what they're doing
Like
or what the
their
action is
values.
or what their values are and what their motives are behind things. But if I'm doing something and I think it's for like the greater good, or I think it's like ultimately helping somebody, then it's also my responsibility to express that and make that known and not just act without doing anything or expressing anything, because then it can come off badly. It can come off like, okay, well, you're doing it for you. You're doing it because you want to do it. When most likely it's not. It's because I think this is the best way to do it, or this is the way where I'm gonna win and you're gonna win. This is the way where we're all gonna be happy. If I do this, then we're gonna get to that place we want to get to. That, you know, even if in like a working environment, you know, if like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this and focus on this because I know this is what we all need. And that can come across, if I think of it from the opposite perspective, somebody's just like, well, they're asking me to do something specific and I'm not because I think something else is priority. Then it could come off to them like, okay, well, he doesn't care what I'm saying. He doesn't respect me, or he thinks he knows what he's doing and wants to just do whatever he wants. So it's up to me to be able to express like, well, okay, I hear what you're saying, but this is what I believe is needed for us to move to that next level, or what I believe needs to be priority, and still doing it because if I believe it, then most likely, I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably right. I mean, I'm just saying. Like, for the most part, like if I think about it and I have time to sit there, I have this time to sit there and think about it logically, but also like imagine like different scenarios. If I have time to really sit in my head, and you give me a problem, I'm gonna solve it. You know, I'm gonna think about it. But the thing is, it's also my responsibility to express that to people and let people know, like, okay, I've thought about it. This is what I've come up with, and these are the reasons why. And this is what I think the next move needs to be.
And actually, what I think is so if you don't mind me saying, like, I feel like one of the things that's so great about ESTPs, and probably this would apply to ENTPs too, since they both have introverted thinking and extroverted feeling, is while, you know, ESTPs and ENTPs, because they both have introverted thinking as their secondary function and extroverted feeling as their third function, they are going to be more aware of that social piece, like the, you know, what is going to be a win-win, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And that translates to, you know, I think a healthy ESTP or ENTP especially, factoring that piece of the social win into like what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to be like logically in a vacuum, like void of human interaction. What makes the most sense is going to be like, it's going to be that, but then like factoring in the human component as well, which actually, especially if you're like in a leadership position or if you're managing people, I think that can be extremely useful.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense too, because when I was younger, there was a lot less of the human component. It was more like a game of chess, like what needs to be done and how we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
When I was supervising, I was like 19 years old, and I was thinking the same way. I was like, okay, well, you know, like if you aren't going to do what's needed, bye. Don't come back. like I just thought of everything as kind of like numbers and kind of as of like, okay, well, you're just a piece to a bigger puzzle. Mm-hmm. So we're all disposable. We're all just pieces. And what makes the most sense for us to take it to the next level? And if you're not a part of that, sorry, that's just the way that it is. Whereas to now, it's more like, okay, well, it's still the same chessboard, but it's still more like, okay, you might not even realize that you're part of the bigger picture, but I know you can be. Right? Like, I know you can get to that next level. Even though before it would have been more like, well, no, you're not. Sorry. You got to accept and move on. And which was very cold and mean, you know, and like, it was pretty messed up the way I used to think. But now it's more like, no, we can all be at that place. It just takes a little bit extra work. And if you're at a place where I know that it's not going to be successful, we're not going to win, and you're the weak link, then I personally feel, and maybe this is just more of a me thing, but that I want to lift that person up to get to that place where we can win with that person.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so, yeah. I don't know if that's an ESTP thing or a me thing, but, whatever.
I mean, I think with the extroverted feeling, there is a component of that, but I think that could be. I think could be a learned thing too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for answering these questions and going so much into detail. I think this was very informative, and I'm really glad that we had this conversation and had the chance to share these things about the ESTP
The
personality.
debater.
No,
I'm kidding.
that's the Yes. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to talk to you soon.
ESTP, ENFJ out.